untuk majlis ini. First and foremost, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, dan salam sejahtera, salam Malaysia, Madani dan Sarawak sayang. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalam ala asrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La yadurru ma ismi syai'un fil ardi wa la fis samai wa huwa samiul alim. First and foremost, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to welcome all the guests to our conference today. Each or International Conference of Muslim Scholars. It is our honor to have you present to share your thought and view in this conference, and I would like to thank all for the arrangement. My fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today our sharing is about ethics from Dr. Faisal A.J. Mustafa. Let me introduce our guest of honor. Dr. Mustafa held the Nelson Mandela Fellowship in Educational Oxford Center for Islamic Studies from 1998 to 2020. He was an associate tutor at the Department for Continuing Education, University of Oxford, 1998 to 2008. He held an associate fellowship at the Science Business School, University of Oxford, 2010-2012, and was awarded a visiting professorship at the International Business School, University Technology Malaysia, 2014 till 2017. Main research was on values-based leadership and the seerah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dr. Mustafa has special interest in e-learning and distance learning programs with special focus on Islamic studies. His top course at the Oxford University Department for Continuing Education include Islam, Faith and Culture, Islam and the West, and Islam in the Modern World. He has contributed to the Leadership Development Program of the Executive Education Center, Science Business School, University of Oxford. He was an external coach and speaker on leadership competencies programs conducted in Malaysia, Brunei, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi. Dr. Mustafa was the Islamic theology tutor for exchange students on the Opus, Stanford University, and Sarah Lawrence Exchange Program at Oxford University. He was invited in 2007 by the United States Department of State to take part in its International Visitor Leadership Program. Without further ado, I would like to invite Prof. Dr. Faisal Mustafa to deliver his speech. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Datuk Haji Misru bin Haji Taha, Sahib Samaha Datuk Haji Kipli bin Haji Yasin, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First thing to say, which I was not including in my lecture, is I'm so grateful for the preceding two distinguished speakers, because some of their ideas I will borrow and incorporate in my presentation. The World Economic Forum 2015 highlighted the theme of the fourth industrial revolution, IR 4.0, that's how they described it. This revolution promises the integration of physical, digital, and biological systems that will impact people's everyday lives and relationships in unprecedented ways. These technological advances would bring benefits and challenges to societies and business enterprises. There is on hand the potential to raise global income levels and through higher efficiency and increased productivity, boost global economic growth. The fourth industrial revolution could make products and services more easily accessible and transmissible for businesses and consumers all along the value chain. Digital capabilities already in place have enhanced the value of products and services while reducing costs, thus benefiting consumers, employees, and other stakeholders. On the other hand, the challenges of IR4 are no less real. Our future readiness to anticipate and face these challenges depends upon understanding of the likely impacts of these challenges in the short and long term, and it depends also upon building a coordinated response among the global community. Technologies, ladies and gentlemen, as many of you would realize, evolve within a setting of social, economic, and management norms. Technological products and services are shaped on the ground of societal values and institutional cultures, as much as they are shaped in the foreground by the application of science and engineering. It is crucial, therefore, to question some deeply ingrained assumptions that have become part of contemporary business culture. One of them, which I think is more or less elapsing, there is no place for God in the workplace. That's an American motto. There is no place for God in the workplace. But more recent trends we should also examine. Shouldn't we align financial incentives for business success with meeting societal objectives? That's a big question. Society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose in addition to making profits. Shouldn't we reject the shareholder primacy governance model and embrace sustainability and stakeholder-focused governance? Professor Colin Mayer, in his seminal work on the cooperation as one of the most important institutions in the modern world, asked the provocative question: why should you, me, why should anyone trust an organization, whether it's a bank or others, trust an organization that is owned and controlled by anonymous, opportunistic, self-interested wealth seekers? We as a society have the right to ask these critical questions. He emphasized that the cooperation is the source of our prosperity, employment, savings, and consumption. Yet, corporations are also the cause of immense problems and suffering, instrument of poverty, pollution, and financial crisis. In conclusion of his work, which was entitled Firm Commitment in his book, He maintained that companies should have stated corporate values. And we just heard from Professor Shelter that states, as a bigger organization, should also have a set of values in order to survive and sustain its survival. So basically, he argued, Colin Mayer, companies, corporations should have stated corporate values, unequivocally observed and guarded by custodians or trustees. These trustees will have no executive role, but act merely as fiduciaries of the different stakeholders to ensure that the stated values of the company or the organization are respected at all times and for all relevant parties. And that extends to government departments and also public institutions like schools, hospitals, and other public sector organizations. The technological revolution will have a profound impact on the way we live, work, and relate to one another. Experts like Professor Klaus Schwab and the MIT economist Eric Brynjolfsson have pointed out that digitization and automation could lead to even greater income inequality by aggravating the schism between returns to capital and returns to labor. They predict that in future, specialized talents and skills will constitute the primary factor of production. This will give rise to a job market increasingly segregated into low-skilled, low-pay, and high-skilled, high-pay segments, which in turn will lead to an increase in social tension. Technology will also have a pervasive impact on our human capacities for compassion, empathy, respect for the vulnerable and the infirm, on our sense of responsibility for others, including stewardship of nature and the planet's finite resources. The threat to our capacity to feel and express compassion and empathy will come from reduced opportunities and the reduced need for human interactions. We need to reflect on the human and social cost of being continually bombarded with information and of the disruptive trends, including the rise of data transmission and connectivity across vast distances. All these values are threatened when personal data are stored and exploited in an irresponsible way in IR 4.0. The challenge of rising above corporate greed and human selfishness while embracing fairness and cooperation in favor of the common good has never therefore been greater to us as a society and communities. Governments, policymakers, corporate leaders and educators have a responsibility to manage the fourth industrial revolution in a way that embraces our values and the social traditions that we cherish. Human beings will always require spiritual nourishment that comes from reflection, meditation, and that is strengthened by altruistic motivations and inspired by a sense of the sacred, of faith itself. Our success in managing the Industrial Revolution in a way depends on our ability to clarify what matters most to society. In 2014, and we are not the only ones who are thinking about these challenges, the world around us is also concerned with the same challenges. In 2014, the World Economic Forum convened the Global Agenda Council on Values to support the forum's work in shaping the future of the world's most complex agendas. The global multi-stakeholder group focused on the goal of building sustainable and inclusive economic growth. They concluded that for strong economic growth to take root, it must be accompanied by strong values-based leadership. And here is the crunch of the matter. That's their conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, quoted from the white paper or the executive summary of the panel's white paper entitled Values and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, published in September 2016. The white paper emphasized three core values in particular. And this is a global council, or a council of global membership. So they were not from one country, one nation, representing different sectors of the economy, including academia, but others. So these were really truly global thinkers who reached at this conclusion that values is so important to the human welfare and well-being in the future. The white paper emphasized three core values in particular. One, human dignity, which was mentioned by Professor Mohammed Noor Manuti. It represents respect for human rights and responsibilities as well as fairness. And when we say respect, and respect as a value in our organizations or within our governments or in our society, it implies other practical matters. When you respect a person, you respect their time, you respect their privacy, you respect their ability to think and be creative for themselves, you respect their human dignity. So all this is part of the value of human dignity and the respect you have for it. They also highlighted the common good as directing effort away from self-centered interest as well as stewardship. So there are these three values. Of course, there are many others. These values, alongside others, are relevant to the way we manage financial markets, international trade and investment, education, employment, health and healthcare systems, food security, and agriculture, as well as technology and manufacture, and not to mention the departments of government. It is clear, therefore, that values-based leadership is essential to the realization of sustained positive change and to the management of IR4. Perhaps paradoxically, as it is quoted, it all comes down to people and values in the end. Now, what are the institutional strategies that decision makers can use to factor values into the daily working environment of our institutions? How do we do it? Okay, let's say we believe in this idea, we like it, but how do we practically implement it? How do we make values part of the business model of our organizations? Whether this is a government department or a school or a bank or a hospital, what do we do in to do that. By way of introduction, let me highlight the work of another eminent academic, Professor Robert Vogel of the Chicago University, regarding the concept of spiritual capital. The concepts of social and human capital are widely recognized in social sciences literature. What is mentioned less frequently, but is nevertheless equally important, is the concept of spiritual capital. The late Professor Robert Vogel was a world-renowned empirical economic scientist and winner of the 1993 Nobel Prize in Economic Science. He stated that self-realization of the individual, which is hard to achieve without a reference to a value system, alongside work ethic, family ethic, and solidarity, and a sense of community, all these constitute spiritual resources, or as he described them, immaterial resources that are most significant for enriching personal and economic development in society. Economic development is not just the GDP growth, but it's how do we feel and are prepared as human beings, as an individuals. And this is to an eminent economist. In order to achieve higher and more sustainable level of economic development, Vogel presented a compelling argument for the redistribution of immaterial assets in society through teaching, peer tutoring, counseling, and moral support. He concluded that resolving the maldistribution of spiritual resources in society creates a win-win situation, which is an Islamic concept, by the way, a win-win situation. For all, because the redistribution of immaterial assets in society is not a zero-sum game. Everyone will win. The importance of values to global business initiatives is a well-researched topic in academia. Values lie at the core of any leadership theory and business strategy. Values shape the characteristics of leaders, which in turn impact their vision, business priorities, and decision-making behavior. Recent publications have emphasized the importance of values such as accountability, trust, collaboration, fairness, and respect to the success of commercial enterprises. Professor Bill George and Elizabeth Moskanter of the Harvard Business School highlighted corporate cases, empirical, proven corporate cases, proving the business benefits of a strategic, values-based leadership approach. Such an approach, where values are embedded in the organizational business model, results in enhanced workforce motivation and engagement, product creativity, increased talent retention, and reduced staff turnover, thus leading to increased sales, improved services, and customer satisfaction. Becoming a more effective leader often requires changing behavior. This means adjusting underlying mindsets, which for some is practice that lies beyond their comfort zone. Have you ever asked yourself, what is your comfort zone? Have you challenged yourself to go beyond your comfort zone, to be a better leader? That's one of the questions that are asked by authentic leaders. So becoming a more effective leader often requires changing behavior. This means adjusting underlying mindsets, which for some is a practice that lies beyond their comfort zone. Once I had the opportunity of meeting Kunal Chair in 2006 at a program in London. He was the chief executive of Norges Bank Investment Management, which manages the sovereign investment fund of Norway. In 2006, the declared value of that was $328 billion. He was having a cup of tea during the break, and I presented him with a cupcake. Probably he pressed too much on it, crumbled on the table. We were engaged in such a serious conversation, I thought, let me give him another cupcake. So I gave him another cupcake. But he paused. He looked at me like this. He said, no. These crumbs should not go to waste. So he took his handkerchief, collected the crumbs, and started eating them. And I said, wow, that gives a message about the values that is held by this man. He doesn't want to waste a cupcake that is worth 10 pence at the time when he is managing over $300 billion. How can we make our young aspiring leaders in government, in wherever they are, how can we make them reach that level of self-awareness, of confidence, and of humility, and hold fast to such values? It's a question for all of us. Because leadership, ladies and gentlemen, is not the privilege of the few. Each and every one of you is a leader in their own context. The father is a leader of a family. The mother is a leader of the family. So we exercise leadership roles in different capacities, and we need to be aware of that and create that sense of self-awareness that we are responsible. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. A towering and inspiring leader of the 20th century was the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela has never wavered in his commitment to the values of inclusive democracy, equality, and learning. Despite terrible provocations, he had not responded to racism with intolerance. His political leadership has been an inspiration in South Africa and throughout the world. Following his release from prison on the 11th of February 1990, where for decades he had suffered harsh and inhumane treatment, his choice of the policy of reconciliation and negotiation helped lead the peaceful transition to multiracial democracy in South Africa. I have the full case study, but there is no time to read through it. In view of the centrality of values to the conceptualization of leadership, professional education and training should encourage aspiring leaders in the public and private sector to examine the alignment of their personal and professional values and how it relates to their personal circumstances and their leadership or their organizational leadership. Institute Business and Society program conducted a longitudinal study involving nearly 1,950 MBA students in 15 business schools across the US. The study found that students are still looking at the benefits of a socially responsible business model in the conventional way, basically good organizational public image. That's how they see it. The study concluded that as the students move through business studies, they find fewer opportunities to practice ethical, responsible decision-making as part of their MBA program. It also found that further along students are in their MBA program, they feel less prepared to manage the workplace values conflict. This is a serious drawback of business management education, given that these future corporate leaders will be called upon to make decisions that will involve value judgments. In another study by the same institute, it was found that despite the perception among students that ethics and values are important in the workplace, only 22% of respondents said their business education is giving them a lot of preparation to handle workplace values conflicts. So these are worrying trends and statistics, especially to the people who work in the higher education sectors. Muslim societies have been experiencing a trend of religious resurgence over the past few decades. This has been brought about partly by the expansive mass education programs that were initiated following political independence, and partly due to the modernization and urbanization of societies, which facilitated the use of technology and mass communications. The result has been the growth of devotional observances in everyday life, which impacted the organizational workplace, among others. In many Muslim countries, it has become a common occurrence for workers and employees to ask for the provision of space at work for daily prayers. It is also not uncommon for workers to be listening to soothing religious hymns or Islamic spiritual reminders during their breaks. Some managers might even start their business meetings with a form of dua or spiritual supplication, as we have done in this conference. In effect, religion could have a positive role to play in the workplace when it is mindfully applied to cultivate spiritual well-being and reinforce values relevant to the workplace, such as trust, respect, accountability, and cooperation. Employees nowadays are mindful of their spiritual, and they wish to live an integrated life where some of their spiritual requisites are catered for at work. A priority for any successful business to consider aligning the core values of its employees, such as integrity, trust, respect, with the corporate values, such as service excellence and product quality and workplace harmony, thus creating a sense of community based on shared values that will sustain organizational business objectives. One viable approach that will nurture an effective level of employees' personal development within the workplace is to use the role model of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the aim of creating more captivating meanings of leadership competencies. An exemplary leadership practice. The reverence of Prophet Muhammad and the impact of his values-based leadership serves to stimulate the development of effective and normative organizational forms with employees, hence improving again service delivery and performance. Appropriate values-based learning material from the seerah of the Prophet could stimulate cognitive processes aimed at aligning personal values with organizational objectives. This is a task for academicians. This is a plea for the higher institutions of education in our country to start working on this theme and on this approach. Muslim societies today are facing the primary challenge of managing the influences of modernization and globalization while trying to maintain their religious and social values. To achieve balanced and sustainable development and sustainable civilization progress, the primary leadership challenge in this context is the development of young professionals who possess the capacity for excellence. We don't want mediocre practices. So young, basically professionals who possess the capacity for excellence and whose hearts are firmly connected to Allah. Those who can discern a productive path in life while resisting the impulses of sensual temptations and the competition for personal luxury and opulence. The enduring challenge, ladies and gentlemen, for our societies is the development of leaders whose conduct and character are consistent with the description given in Surah Al-Qasas, وَابْتَغِي فيما آتاك الله الدار الآخرة ولا تنس نصيبك من الدنيا وأحسن كما أحسن الله إليك ولا تبغي الفساد في الأرض إن الله لا يحب المفسدين. To maintain this leadership standard in Muslim societies, there is a pressing need to formulate a more creative approach to education and learning at all levels. Training of the soul is as important to achieving our development goals and economic growth today as is training the mind. Today, we cannot overstate the case for an inspiring educational strategy that would place Islamic values and social responsibility at the heart of our professional business environment and organizational activity. Academic business schools employ case studies and role models in teaching leadership competencies and provide leadership education and training. However, we all recognize that there is a current overemphasis on Western models in the majority of literature in the business schools. Students of leadership want to see models that resonate with their cultural heritage and experience. This is how a recent publication has stated from Oxford University Press. One viable approach to sustain an active level of professional development for us is to use the role model of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to inspire more captivating meanings of exemplary leadership practices. Appropriate that, and I repeat, appropriate. If we read the Sunnah of the Prophet with the aim of extracting such material, it is possible to do that. But it requires a consolidated academic effort, not just by a few individuals, but by academic institutions, because there will have to be a level of cooperation between between business schools, between faculties of Islamic studies, and other intellectual thinkers to produce something that is empirically valid. But at least the idea that one viable approach to do all this is to use the seerah of the Prophet. Appropriate values-based learning material from the seerah constitute, in Vogel's useful expression, immaterial assets in our societies. So we can use it for the betterment of our communities. They constitute immaterial assets that can stimulate cognitive processes aimed at professional development and enhancing leadership competencies. Leadership studies in higher education should extract appropriate learning material from the seerah narratives as part of the curriculum used for teaching organizational behavior and leadership studies. Our knowledge economy would greatly benefit from deploying this enriching source of spiritual capital in business training and professional development. The method of human talent development would enhance exemplary leadership practices at the workplace. It can do so by integrating the leadership competencies described in contemporary empirical leadership models with the inspirational practices exemplified by the Prophet Muhammad. The concept of illuminating and learning advantageous leadership practices through inspirational role modeling provides an effective tool, an effective educational tool for stimulating positive change. The seerah of operations and would enhance exemplary leadership practices in public and private enterprises for the betterment of all. And thank you for your patience. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Basil Mustafa, for your presentations. Keyword highlight from presentations about leadership, the moral compass, and I think Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is our role model. And also another keyword is about kullukum ra'in wa kullu ra'in mas'ulun 'an ra'iyatihi. We are all leaders. Leaders to ourselves, leaders to the family, to the community, at work, and also at office, and also for the nations. And we have a responsibility for that. Right, so we have 45 minutes here before 1 o'clock. So you can ask many questions. So now we open our Q&A session. We have 3 microphones in the middle, to the right, and in the left. So please come forward and state your name and also designations and ask your question. Okay, over to you. Audience. Yeah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Sandeep bin Zahid. Thank you for the academic presentation. I've been thinking about as a history student again. I studied the Industrial Revolution and so on as the first revolution. Now we're talking about the fourth revolution, Industrial Revolution. To me, most of the Muslim nation now has not even gone to the first industrial revolution. They're talking about the fourth revolution. The first industrial revolution is about inventing inventing machine technology. In particular, I'm very interested that we should have a Muslim engine, Muslim bomb, Muslim missile in that, yeah, when we talk about industrial revolution. But let's start with the engine. We have not invented even a small engine. So I think we shouldn't be talking about the fourth industrial revolution where we are in, still perhaps in the, not even in the first industrial revolution. At the same thing also our policy talk about even education and so on. We're taking things from developed countries, Western nations. When they stop working on Saturday in the West, 5 working days, we developed countries also follow the same thing, but we should be working harder, And if you look at China, where they have they have perhaps the fourth industrial revolution, and they invented things now, like Professor Manati said that they have invented rocket, right? Flew to the moon and so on now to Mars. So perhaps we should have a mind to not be prisoned by Western civilization, Western civilization. Thank you.
Okay. We can like someone another person ask this.
Just a brief comment about this thing.
Yeah, they don't want to ask question.
Yeah. On
Yeah. All right. Okay. You want me to answer the first question?
it's just an observation that even if I agree with you that Muslim societies are falling behind in terms of the technologies, nevertheless, what is happening around us in the world will affect our communities. As I mentioned, data is being transmitted nowadays. I know that hospitals in the Muslim world basically are registering the names of patients, where they live, how do they, and these data are transferred across the globe. The banking system is also interlinked. So in some aspects, maybe Muslim societies or countries are falling behind, but in other aspects, they are actually using that type of technology, and if not using it, being affected by it, whether they like it or not. So I think a degree of awareness about the impact of such technologies on our social fabric, on our communities is important, and how to address this. It saddens me, to be honest, it saddens me when I see a person like Kunut Jaya behaving in such a civilized way, caring about the cupcake that is worth 10 pence. And when I see another Muslim chief executive of a bank doesn't care about the same values. And it saddens me. I would have thought that the Muslim should be in a better position to realize the significance and importance of these values to him as a person, because he's accountable at the end of the day, to his communities around him, to his society at large. So I would like to see young aspiring leaders being educated about values-based leadership, whether they are there or they would be there in a few years' time. That, I think, is a personal development quest, which is